Early in the morning, but this is the Rules Committee. This isn't your Trump derangement committee that you call the January 6th committee.
Look at that fake ass smile. Right? She's like, got him. This woman is an absolute fraud. She just says whatever she thinks will get her clicks and likes and engagement. She's basically the new generation of social media politicians. She's an influencer politician. That's what she is. It's all about her following.
My last name doesn't have an S on it, Ms. Green.
I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Raskin.
We are in a position right now in this country to do something about Margerie Taylor.
Talking about the Second Amendment. You came here to talk to us about the Second Amendment, right?
I'm here to talk about due process rights and protecting Americans' due process rights.
All right. So I just want to be clear. You've been quoted at least as saying that the January 6th riot at the Capitol was in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which says you can overthrow tyrants. You've also testified that people have a right to carry guns, presumably wherever they want to go. So it seems to me that lots of people were armed on that day, but the logic of your argument is that everybody could have been armed and brought their weapons with them. And I'll take that.
What evidence?
So he is presenting a question of. So she claims she's all about the Second Amendment, right? Everyone should have a right to carry guns, presumably wherever they want to, right? So he's asking her, based on that, so you would have liked it if all the people on January 6th could have brought their guns if they wanted to, right? That's their right. They should be able to bring their guns, right? Now, the classic scenario of when you're asked an uncomfortable question that exposes you in some way, what you do is you latch onto something as a decoy or a distraction. So you find some other thing that the person said that there's some issue with it, and then you hyper focus on that, and you get super dramatic, or maybe you pretend to get upset about something. You're like, why is it that you're asking me all these questions? Or whatever it is. And then it's like you totally start yelling and whatever, and acting as if you're outraged, but you're being outraged over something super trivial. But the reality is you're not outraged at all. You're just trying to distract and derail the conversation and trying to run away from something. So she doesn't want to answer the question about people at January 6th all showing up with guns. So she wants to use a decoy of, let's talk about whether people on January 6th had guns or not. Right? That's a common talking point from the right wing. And that's something she prefers to talk about rather than answer the question, which would be revealing. Right? Would be very, very awkward for her to say, yeah, they should have all had guns if they wanted to. That's their right. So is she really for the Second Amendment? Right? I hear a lot of people, on the right talking about Second Amendment. We have a right to have guns. And she claims that she's one of them. Right? So why wouldn't she just say, yes, it's their right if they wanted to bring the guns? Right? It's a simple question. Why? If you really believe in it, why is she hiding from it? Why doesn't she lean in and be like, yes, it's their right? I think you know the answer to that question.
Evidence do you have that a lot of people were armed? Due process rights.
All right. So I just want to be clear. You've been quoted at least as saying that the January 6th riot at the Capitol was in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, which says you can overthrow tyrants. You've also testified that people have a right to carry guns, presumably wherever they want to go. So it seems to me that lots of people were armed on that day, but the logic of your argument is that everybody could have been armed and brought their weapons with them. And I'll take that.
What evidence do you have that a lot of people were armed that day, Mr. Raskin? Do you have that to introduce into the record?
Just wait for it, but.
Notice how she completely deflects from the question, and also notice how uncomfortable she is. Whatever do you have it to introduce into Yeah, well, tell us about the evidence. This claim that you're making. Why is she running from the question?
Weapons with them, and I'll take that.
What evidence do you have that a lot of people were armed that day, Mr. Raskin? Do you have that to introduce into the record?
Just wait for it. But when it comes out, presumably you'll be supporting it, right? That they would have a right to have guns and knives with them. Is that right?
Mr. Raskin,
is that your position?
No, Mr. Raskin.
Well, no, I'm going to ask the questions here because this is.
Hear what he asked her. Very specific. Is it your position that they would have had a right to have guns? If she's really a Second Amendment person, she would say yes, they have that right. And people can play games, bad faith, and say, well, that's a trick question because maybe some of them were mentally ill or had criminal records or whatever the reasons that someone would not be able to have guns. But that's not an explanation because you can, if you're really Second Amendment, you're like everybody should have guns if they want to. You can say that and acknowledge the exceptions as well. You say yes, they have a right to bring their guns, as long as they can pass the background check, or as long as there's no mental illness, or as long as they're not a felon, whatever it is, right? So you can't say the reason why she didn't want to say it is because of some people shouldn't have guns, and she doesn't think every single person should have guns, right? She could mention that, right? If you're really Second Amendment, here's an opportunity to say yet again, yes, every American has a right to have a gun. If you believe there's exceptions, mention the exceptions. There's no reason for her to run away from declaring her position on people having a right to have guns.
The Rules Committee. You're not a member of the Rules Committee, Ms. Green. Are you? Are you a member of the Rules Committee?
I'm a witness here at the Rules Committee.
Okay, so let me just ask you a question.
That is talking about due process rights, not your lies about January 6th, about President Trump and others.
Okay, I never mentioned him.
So she says she's here not to talk about the lies about January 6th. What lies about January 6th? I mean, sure, she wanted to focus on people having guns, but the question being asked is not about that, right? The question being asked is, should the people there have had a right to bring the guns? So even if nobody had a gun on January 6th, that doesn't change the question being asked. Do the people who went to January 6th, went to the Capitol in January, do they have the right to have brought their guns? Or should they have the right to bring their guns? We know they don't because the law's there. But are those laws unconstitutional? So therefore, they should have had a right to bring their guns. And even if you want to add exceptions, put exceptions. She's again refusing to say that they have a right to bring their guns and that she's on board with that. Because clearly she's not. Clearly she's just pandering to people who really believe that. People who are really, hardcore, 2A folks. She's just trying to pander to them. But she actually agrees with the Democrats that, there should be some regulation on guns. Not everybody should have guns, right? And she has an issue with a whole bunch of people going to the Capitol armed. But for some reason, she won't say that.
Brought him up.
The problem is